Professor Kitagawa. Good afternoon. I thank you for your introduction. I'm from the Japanese Society for Cooperative Studies. I serve as a vice chair, and I am the Professor Taichi Kitagawa of the Fukui Prefecture University. I'm from the economic faculty. Allow me to be seated. The subject of the seminar is creating the local community which are sustainable. It is indeed a very important theme or keyword, shall I say. Cooperative by design are to support and enhance the livelihood of the cooperators and to promote agriculture activities. But of course, it is also important that the cooperatives work to serve the local community in which the cooperators are based. In 1995, the ICA adopted the principles, and the seventh principle talks about the community involvement, concern for the community. And also Professor Redo talked about this before that. And given that 1995 principle of ICA has adopted the concern for community, and also in the International Year of the Cooperatives, it says that cooperatives for a better world, or for cooperatives for a better world. And also, as was discussed earlier, in the blueprint, sustainability is positioned as a very important keyword. So now we have 4 gentlemen on the stage, and or rather 3, and 4 of them in their own right have given us a very meaningful lecture, a talk. Now we have to translate what we have heard into the Japanese context so that we can take advantage of what we have learned. In Japan, whether it's economic and social, we face very many challenges. So as cooperatives, how should we work to find solutions? I think that so let me reflect back the report of each speaker. First, Monsieur Vancel said that people must be in the center, and he talked about the importance of education. In particular, the younger generation should be educated, and so that they will have the means to be involved in the cooperative movement. And Mr. Charles Gould of ICA, what he said was quite impressive. He talked about the second point of the blueprint, i.e., the sustainability. But he talked about the advancement of the cooperative and advancement of the community constitute or result in a virtuous circle. And there has to be a virtuous circle that both are linked and triggering the advancement of the other. That was truly impressive. Whilst he has already left, the third speaker, Dr. Lori, talked about food, water, electricity, energy, and the importance of putting those elements together. He also touched upon the challenges or issues related to the renewable energy. And it is in those respective and diverse areas that the cooperatives are indeed playing a very important role might not be overly visible to the outside world. And that commitment or involvement should be known and understood by non-cooperators as well. Lastly, Mr. Pezzini, he discussed the three types, the three European models that exist in Europe. So there was an empirical analysis: France, Italy, France, United Kingdom, and Italy in this order. So, so he talked about the three different types of model. So by understanding or by knowing those models, we will have to discuss what will be the best model fitted for the Japanese context and environment. So it may have been somewhat a biased personal summary of what I have heard, but of course we have listened to very many important points, and I think there was truly a very informative experience. Now, having said so, I'm afraid we don't even have 1 hour, but given that limited time, we would like to have interaction with the members of the audience and deepen our discussion.
Now, we have received some questions already, and let us start by answering those questions, and as necessary, we can delve deeper into the topics addressed by the questions. We might be running out of time, but please allow us to keep some questions unanswered. Now, the first question is for all three of the speakers. The cooperative activities awareness will have to be enhanced, but what should we do in order to enhance awareness of cooperative activities? So this has been an important issue in Japan since the International Year of Cooperatives. So this question goes to all three speakers. So let us start with this question. Then perhaps we can start with Mr. Gould.
Yes, I'd like to answer that because this goes to the question of identity, which is one of the 5 strategic areas in the blueprint. And we saw during the International Year how successful we were in getting the International Year logo used by cooperatives around the world. And that helped us realize that we need an image that can signal to the public quickly that the scale and the breadth of what cooperatives are doing. And so we created a global cooperative mark as one of the initial blueprint initiatives. And this is an image that we'd like cooperatives around the world to use. And our goal is that by 2020, it will become one of the most well-known ethical brands, ethical marks in the world, similar to the fair trade mark in some ways. This is not intended to replace the logo or the individual cooperative identity that cooperatives have developed, but to be used in conjunction with it. And the strategy is that it would be very expensive to try to have a global public awareness campaign. But if we can already get the cooperative messages through the distribution channels, if you will, of existing cooperatives. Cooperatives are already spending collectively hundreds of millions of dollars a year on their marketing and communications efforts. So if we can get the mark, this cooperative image, in the public eye around the world so that every time they turn around they see it, and they see that this is a cooperative and this is a cooperative, then they'll have an increasing appreciation for the scale and the impact. Now, we also have a public awareness campaign on the internet, which is why we're pushing the .coop identity as part of the visibility that we hope cooperatives will adopt, so that they differentiate themselves from .com, .org, and other names. Now, we're telling cooperatives you can have as many of those as you want. There's no reason to change your website, but also have a .coop identity that you can begin to use, because there is increasing noise and new domains on the internet. And we think every cooperative should use the .coop more and more, not just for your name, but also for campaigns. There are many names that are taken on .com that are available in .coop, many concepts, many ideas, many slogans. So we think there's a lot of potential. We do have plans for a public awareness campaign, and we're just beginning that now as one of the Blueprint initiatives, but it will always have to depend on working through existing cooperatives.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Bansal, the same question to you.
Yeah, maybe to expand on what Chuck already presented, three things I could add. Is first, trying to find the ways to turn to the young persons. I believe, first, they are the future. Secondly, we have to get involved with them and to involve them into the co-ops. So for first thing which is important, and that strategy.coop and so on can be used there, is the social medias. Now, slowly, but it's getting faster. Many French cooperatives are starting working on the social media. Should it be Twitter? Should it be Facebook? For example, my own bank. I run my own Facebook, okay? Everything which is important, it's a professional Facebook. It's not what I do for private things. But we address to people. So that's very important. And the part of this, it's transparent. Do what you say and say what you do. That's the most important thing for the young persons. And especially in banking, they don't anymore want to be involved in black boxes. They don't like black boxes. They like to understand what's going on there, and especially for the money. So it is important. For example, there has been a huge shift in the French cooperative banking sector after the crisis. All the cooperative banks rediscovered they were cooperatives, and they were telling they are cooperative differently. So that's very interesting. Even being a co-op could be a source of competition, a cooperative competition. It's not being more cooperative than the other. It's being cooperative differently from the others. In my bank, in Credit Cooperative, we're trying to be very much cooperative. In the Credit Agricole, they're doing the same, but in different ways. So it's very interesting because it's not because you're co-ops, you're all the same. We are not all the same. We have different topics, different ideas, and so on, but we still rely on the same principles. The last thing which I could tell is, of course, turning to the public, is turning to the youngsters in the schools. And, for example, in France, in COP-FR, which is a national federation, the national gathering of all COPs, we had an agreement with the government that each year there is a cooperative week inside the schools. And this week, and we will try to foster this idea, it's the cooperative members that should go to the classrooms, that should go in front of the young pupils. It's about 10, the pupils of the age of 10, and trying to explain very, very practically, because when you're 10, you can't understand very difficult concept. So you want to understand, you want to see, you want to touch things. And something we're building up is we're making some films. Very, 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 it's drawings. It's just very simple things, okay? Things, and I was explaining we're working on a new film. And I was telling people, the three cute ladies working in a COP-FR, and with the company we were working on this film, and say, next time we will do some mangas. I think we have to turn to mangas, because even the young French pupils now, they read mangas. So I believe the next step for us will be to publish cooperative mangas. So I believe this is a way to expand the awareness on cooperatives.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vezzini.
In very, very few words, because several things already been presented by the colleagues. I would like to stress this dimension of identity. I think it's really, really important to be recognized, to be visible. And certainly the campaign launched by ICA, it has to be supported and implemented in all our national organizations. I would like also to point the importance to show, to tell, to present stories. Also during the international year, the Story COP. Each year on the website, one story of one cooperative around the world. It's a nice initiative. We have to be able to tell our story and to present also the success. Because sometimes it's enough one bad case or problem in one country that for weeks and weeks all newspapers are related to this bad situation and not of the thousands of other good initiatives that going on every day. Also this feeling of belonging to a stronger, larger movement. Sometimes a cooperator from a consumer COP do not really feel that an agricultural cooperative or a transport or a taxi cooperative or an housing cooperative belong all together to the same movement. So we need to find opportunity, I don't know, a cooperative festival, a cooperative week, an annual cooperative event that gather, able to join the different experiences and federation and tradition together, to give a feeling, to be participant of the same effort to a diverse, different way to do economy.
Thank you very much. There has been a lot of ideas and hints presented. Now, let me go on to the next question.
So we have to enhance the social awareness, the public awareness of the cooperative movement. And the next question is also quite relevant to what we have discussed, and the questions are directed to all of three of you. It's education. Mr. Vansel, in his talk, emphasized the importance of education. To be a little more concrete, now, cooperative education if there is any example that would support the cooperative education, that's one question from the floor. Cooperative education, if there are any cases that support the cooperative education. But since it relates to the first question, I would like to listen to all three of you. So, again, would Mr. Gould like to start?
Let me add just a couple of points, and I think Jean-Louis in particular has made some excellent points on this one already. When we developed the blueprint, we had a much longer list of possible strategic areas than 5. I had hoped we would get it down to 3, so we could really focus, but it was a couple dozen long. And we finally got it down to the 5 because we thought more than that was just going to be unmanageable and too dispersed. And we heard a lot of pushback on 2 in particular that are missing. Why aren't they there? And one is technology, and one is education. And so of the 5 we have, which nobody objects to, people said, well, education should be there. It's so important. Technology should be there. It's so important. But our position is that those really have to underpin each of the 5. Technology is a tool to really advance the other 5 strategies, and education is something that has to run through each of these 5 areas. When we look at what that means specifically, a lot of it does come out in public awareness, a lot of the education issues. How do we get the public to be more aware? How do we educate them about what the cooperative means? We commissioned a study in 2012 by a global marketing firm called Ipsos Marketing. And they looked at what people know about cooperatives in 5 different parts of the world, including Tokyo. They looked in Tokyo, Buenos Aires, Manchester, UK, Quebec, Canada, and Paris. Thank you, Paris. And it's right in front of me, Paris. And what they found was very similar, was that people have good impressions of the cooperative. It's in the right part of their brain. They think of it as a good thing, but they know almost nothing about it. They really don't understand what it is. So from a public awareness campaign, that's okay. We don't have a hole to dig out of. We don't have negatives. We don't have problems to overcome in any significant way. We just have the opportunity to educate people. There was a study that same year in Australia that asked people if they were a member of a cooperative, and 20% of Australians said yes. Well, actually, 80% of Australians are members of the cooperative, but a lot of them just don't know it. So they are joining groups like auto clubs and groups that are structured as a cooperative. They know it's a good thing, they like it, they keep their membership, but they don't realize it's a cooperative. So the need for education is significant. And we think there are obviously many ways you can do that. Getting the education in the schools is one. Getting education in graduate programs and law schools and business schools is essential, so that when people go to business consultants, when they go to attorneys, they're advised of this option that otherwise just doesn't get presented. But more immediately, we have the opportunity to use something that we've been neglecting recently, I think, at least globally. I think you've done a better job of using this in Japan, and that's the International Day of Cooperatives. So the first Saturday in every July every year is the International Day of Cooperatives. And we really haven't done a good job of doing more than just putting out a statement or a declaration. And we think that there's the opportunity to really elevate that and possibly align our communications and our policy agendas so that we use that day, which again is a gift the United Nations gives us every year, to say something and put their imprimatur on it about cooperatives, and maybe look at what we want to do that year on a policy agenda. For example, this year would have been good on the Sustainable Development Goals, to really do something in July that would drive awareness of cooperatives and educate the public so that we can get support for a policy agenda we have. We'll do something this year, but we really need now to be planning for 2016 if we're really going to have a global campaign. So that's just one idea of how we can be better at educating the public with the tools we have right in front of us.
はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. Then, Mr. Bansal.
Yeah, on education, maybe to complete other ideas that might be useful here in Japan. There are quite a few things I would like to quote. First is, of course, we have to maybe rethink, rebirth. It depends from countries. What was called in the past, or in some countries, the cooperative college. It is something which might be very, very interesting, very useful, and whatever you call it. And especially, I think we should try to find ways to gather and educate together board members and workers. I believe this is something we're trying to push forward very much on professional tuition on the cooperative sector in France. Now is common seminars, common tuition with workers and board members. There shouldn't be any more split. They are working together to do something together, so it's not the rank and file on the side and the tops on the other side, okay? That's something which I believe is something which is important in education. Secondly is, of course, trying to sneak in at the university level or at the high school level to find ways where co-ops could be a part of the program. That's what we're doing in France in many different type of universities or business schools, for example. It is important that cooperative has to be considered as a normal way of enterprise, like any others. It's improving, but it's still to improve. And the third thing which I believe we have to work on, and that goes back to this social media technology and so on, is the MOOCs. That's new trend in education. That is to say, educating with letting people being at home, with not having to move back to the university or to the school. And there you could have a good example, which is St. Mary's University process. St. Mary is in Halifax, in Canada, and they have a school inside the university for the cooperatives, and they have launched a tremendous and a wonderful work on MOOCs, this is internet tuition on cooperatives. And of course, I'm thinking, and I believe, but that's not yet on the process, but that's just an idea. Inside the global ICA, we have a research network, which is interesting, researcher network. They will gather this year in Paris at the end of May. But maybe we could find a way for a kind of network so that all people working on education, you could gather, you could find ways to work together on could we launch cooperative MOOCs. I'm trying to expand this idea that, okay, now I'm glad to be in Tokyo, but it would be wonderful if I would have stayed in Paris and I would have done the same thing being in Paris and you in Tokyo. So we have to find ways, and technology will be of a great use.
ありがとうございました。特に大
Thank you. University level efforts. I think you've given us many good clues and advices. So, Enzo-san.
Yes, few words to add at what very complete way already presented by the colleague. just to give you another data on the lack of presence of a cooperative presentation in the economic and business text of university. There is a very interesting research done by a Finnish professor and published on the important Cambridge Economic Journal a few years ago. And he studied from all the pages of all the manuals, texts used in the Finnish university from 1905 until 1995, if I remember well. And it's clear that the percentage of pages, chapter, paragraph on cooperative is something very, very limited. And with some increasing in period of economic crisis. So it seems that when the situation is not so easy for the economy, we tend to look also some elsewhere. But suddenly it disappears. So it's very interesting research, and I think it's one of the problems, and we have to cope with. There is a sort of, en French, we say the pensée unique, a very unique way of thought.
One size fits all.
And I have to change this attitude, and it's important also. Some academics, some professors, some scholars have the capacity also to, and the strength, maybe with the help of movement, to produce, to write economic text with another view. So it's difficult, but we have to change this unique way of thought.
Maybe to add on this point, you have to know that the last economic Nobel Prize, Jean Tirole, is French, is from Toulouse, and he wrote some very interesting articles in economics on competition. That means competition and cooperation. And he showed that competition is the best way to achieve in economic process. So, and he wrote some articles on the cooperatives. That was quite a few years ago. So that's exactly that type of persons we could refer to. It's always good to have a Nobel Prize taking some concern about the cooperative. So Jean Tirole might be one.
ありがとうございます。コーペティションっていうのはすごくいい。
Thank you very much. Co-opetition sounds like a very good keyword. Mr. Gould mentioned that education is a cross-cutting topic of all the strategies in the blueprint. I think that was important. And also, there is not much reference to cooperatives in textbooks. Japan is in a similar situation. Even at universities, there are almost no subjects teaching cooperatives. Since IYC, in elementary school textbooks, as many descriptions as possible about cooperatives is something that we have just started. Thank you very much for all those responses. Now, social awareness and education are the topics that we have discussed so far. And there's another question that goes to all three presenters, a common question to all three of you. Especially Mr. Ento Pezzini in his report mentioned that intersectoral or cooperative to cooperative cooperation or intersectoral collaboration was referred to. But can you tell us about specific case studies of intercooperative collaboration, of intersectoral collaboration? So raise public awareness, educate people, and then as a next step, as cooperatives, how can we create a cross-cutting mechanism or organization? I believe that is something that is important. So are there any, can you tell us about specific cases of sector to sector collaborations? Perhaps we can change the order in which I ask you to answer. Mr. Pezzini first.
Thank you for the question. I can give you three examples, but one is on social cooperative, but it's a long history. I prefer go to the recent one. The two recent experience I briefly mentioned during my intervention is the new federation on health cooperative. That is the result of the transfer of a certain number of cooperatives belonging to other federations. I express myself in another way. So the fact that in Conf Cooperative we were 9 federations, we were 8, federations, but we identify as a new challenge for the next year. The welfare system is really a problem in our countries. Population are aging. The welfare system costs a lot. Other countries will not be able to afford for a long time. And we found that in the past we developed a lot of therapy solution, and we have to go back to the care. So from the hospital solution to the home services in order to facilitate services and to have less cost for the welfare system. And so we found that as a cooperative movement, thanks to the presence of a lot of cooperative pharmacy cooperative, a lot of social cooperative everywhere in the country, the new presence of doctors cooperative, and the complementary mutuals, health mutuals belonging to the cooperative banks, we are able to organize a system of doctor, pharmacy, social workers, and nurses, complementary mutuals for health initiative. But all these specialities were in different federations. Workers' coop was in Worker Federation. Pharmacy was in Consumer Federation. Social workers in Solidaridad Federation. Mutuality complementary in health was in the Bank Federation. So we have been able, thanks to our umbrella Apex organization, to cut a part of a cooperative from one federation and to organize a new one, taking 4 different groups. I don't know if I've been able to explain correctly. With a blackboard would be easier. But so the fact we have an Apex umbrella organization with several sectors. We organize a new sector on health, taking group of cooperative belonging to the sector. So it will be possible where there is a global vision, a global capacity, a global political strength to take out from one federation a group of cooperative in order to build a new one. So the health is for us the 9th federation, but created not from primary cooperative. But in order to organize a response toward a new challenge that we identify as a critical challenge for all our country, and on which, as a cooperative movement, we try to provide an answer. Second example, it was what we call the community cooperative. 5,000 municipalities out of 8,000 in our country have less than 5,000 inhabitants. So the 70% of the Italian population live in small village. And the risk normally are small village, in very isolated part of the country, the mountains, on the valley, and the risk is the economic desertification, is the depopulation of this region. How to maintain, how to organize, revitalize an economic activities, how to keep open a shop, how to have again a bank outlet, how to maintain a school. If we have to young family, you have to be there in order to have a teacher and a class school. So we try to combine several specialities from banks, from consumer, from social cooperative, from workers, from tourist cooperative, from agricultural, how to organize a new type of cooperative. We call it a community cooperative, able to provide several services, a multi-purpose, a multi-service, from the shop that can be able also to provide combining with the national postal service of a sort of with a local cooperative bank, the consumer cooperative, and the petrol station, and so on. So how to combine a multi-purpose initiative in order to be able to offer services in this small village, because without services, as you can imagine, people will leave, as well as aging population. How to maintain and to provide a home care service for aging population, thanks to the combination of the social cooperative. So we are trying, and there is two ways. One way is it's a multi-purpose cooperative. The other way is a consortium of several specialized cooperatives, agricultural cooperatives, transport cooperatives, social cooperatives, and agricultural cooperatives that can be independent, but with a second-level cooperative, a consortium that organize, manage all this activity in order to provide a global service to this remote area of the countries.
Thank you so much. As a matter of fact, there will be a related question. So maybe I would ask this question first. Federation. What do federations do? What are their actual works? So I think there are some relevancy. Can you talk about the works of the federations? What do they actually do?
But I would like to specify there are federation and there is the confederation. So what I call, translating the Italian term, centrali, centrals, we call the general association of, and in our model, several federations, as I told you, 9 for the moment federation, belong to the apex Conf Cooperative, or our sister organization Lega Coop is the same. And as I explained, in the few years we will a unique alliance of Italian cooperative with the same system, an apex umbrella alliance and several federations. A primary cooperative belongs to the apex, to the umbrella. So the first link with the movement is the umbrella, and secondly is the federation. So the membership fees are to the umbrella, not to the federation. So the belonging is to the movement, and then we can also participate on this specific professional sectoral activity. So I hope to be clear. There are two levels: the political global level, and then there is a sectoral specificity. And of course, no one better that agricultural cooperative can cope with agriculture as matter. No one than workers' cooperative can cope with industrial initiative and so on. But there is a global general responsibility that it's tasks of the apex organization. Lobbies, representation, assistance, promotion, exploring new ways, as I just told you, health or community cooperative is the task of alliance, not of one federation.
はいありがとうございました。それじゃあ
Thank you very much, Mr. Bansal. Now, let us go back to the previous question. Can you tell us about sector-to-sector collaboration?
Yes, I will on the French examples I will give you. And of course, you have to understand that from countries to countries, there are not only different legal matters, but there are also different spirit. You might know France is a country of revolution. So each French person do believe he can build by himself something different, something new, even inside the cooperative movement. So it is interesting to understand that everything that has been done, starting from persons, from individuals, they were already members of co-ops, but they were feeling that they couldn't stay on one range question, because everyone is not only a single set person. Jean-Louis Bansal, I'm a consumer sometimes. I'm a producer sometimes. I'm a banker sometimes. So I can't be divided. I can't be divided. My needs, they have to be fulfilled. And of course, what happens is myself, as I'm members of different co-ops, different mutuals, and so on. So all the example I will give you, they were launched and done by people that were really co-opters, but they didn't want to be squeezed into a single set question. So there are two examples I could give. And of course, that was exactly what Enzo was telling about the interest of transversal topics. One first is fair trade and how it expanded. So you all know what is fair trade. When it started from north to south, okay? How can we, as consumers in the north, in the developed countries, how we can buy product that would be product in the south by in fair condition. And we know that most of it was from cooperatives in the south, in developing countries, selling their products into shops in developed countries, sometimes in co-ops, sometimes not only in co-ops. And that's interesting because at the beginning, it was the The shops were cooperative shops in France. That's the way it went. And of course, this idea was so good that it was taken by the other shops, the non-cooperative. So the problem for the traditional cooperative shops, they launched this idea of fair trade, and then it was taken over by everyone. How you keep your own specificity as being a co-op. So they said, okay, they worked together and said, okay, now we're going to launch a North-North fair trade. Not only South-North, North-North fair trade. And that is, how can we do fair trade locally? And that's the way it started, with new type of co-ops. And it was mostly on organic food. How can we employ disabled people or people without any employment? And of course, they didn't want to be set on only agriculture, because they produce vegetables, they produce organic food. They didn't want to be set only as consumers. They didn't want to be set only as social co-ops. And of course, that was a question because inside the French system, Enzo described, we have a strong sectoral federation. So the question was, as those new co-ops, should they be member of the Agriculture Co-ops Federation? Should they be member of the Worker Co-ops Federation? Should they? Okay. And they said, okay, we don't bother. We won't join anyone. So that was the beginning of the worst thing for the structure, for the federation, okay, because they wouldn't pay any fees to any federation. So that makes the bureaucracy sink over, okay, because the worst for any federation is to discover, and some co-ops can exist not being member of any federation, not paying any fee to a federation. So we discover a way. Since 1947 in France, we have a global law on co-ops, not only considering on sectors. Okay, there is the 47 law on co-ops, and we said, okay, we're going to shelter those type of co-ops under this wide umbrella, okay? And of course, that was a way to push the federation to talk together and say, is it so important that they should be called agriculture co-ops? Should they be called, okay, that's an example. We are now discovering the new trend on sustainable development in housing. So this new trend is pushing over. So I believe this is the way we do things. We do the revolution, okay? Because on the ground, and that's something which for us French is very important. We love politics. We love the law and making legislative process, but we love to destroy what we built, okay? So anytime there is a set frame, you can be sure that no longer than a few years later, someone would say, okay, this framework is ridiculous. We cannot work with that. So, and what do they say? Reality is much more important than any legal framework and so on. And they know they change much more the world by this way than only setting in preset frameworks. So that's what I wanted to explain. And it's getting very, very, very prosperous, very active, this intersectoral activity in France, and mostly from young persons. They don't dare about the old-fashioned, federation clothing. And it's a huge push for us, because, okay, we have to understand that.
Thank you. Maybe you've covered this, Mr. Marcel. 2014, July. Is it social solidarity or social alliance law? Is that the name of the law? It's a literal translation. But there was a question to the enactment of the social 2014 July enacted social solidarity economic law. So it's only a short period since the enactment of law, but what has been the impact or influences or the outcome of this new law?
This law was passed a year ago, a bit more than a year ago, and it is interesting because it gives a legal form to what we call in France the social economy sector. Social economy sector in France is co-ops, mutuals, and association. And we have had a huge discussion, a tremendous political discussion on this new trend, which is social entrepreneurship, which is classical limited companies deciding that they're going to work on a social purpose, okay? That exists in the States, for example, with a new type of legal framework. So the question was, should those new type of social entrepreneurship be on the same size as the co-ops, the mutuals, and the association or not? And with, at that time, the minister in charge, we found an agreement. We said, okay, inside the social economy sector, social and solidarity economy sector, there will be 3 legal forms: co-ops, mutuals, and associations. And we do agree that the classical legal form, they could be members, they could be recognized as being members of the social and solidarity economy sector on one request and one requisite. They have to comply with the cooperative principles. Okay? So it is interesting. And that goes back to the question, is the law meant for the man or the man for the law? And we said, the law is meant for the man. So we said, okay, we have to change maybe our categories, legal categories, accepting that those type of enterprise would be brought inside the social economy and solidarity sector. That's the first thing. That's what we call the inclusive concept of social and solidarity economy. The other important things for this 2014, 31st of July law was the renewal of the 47 cooperative law. I told you we have an umbrella law because in France we have the 47 law, which is for all the co-ops, and underneath there are some sectoral laws for agriculture co-ops, worker co-ops, and so on. So we work together inside COP-FR, the gathering of all the sectors in France, and we wanted to renew the 47 law, 1947 law. And what did we do? This is where we found a way to shelter the multi-sectoral, multi-purpose co-ops, deciding not to be member of any sector. Secondly, we decided to extend to all co-ops something that was already set and working well, but it was only working for the agriculture co-ops and for the worker co-ops, is the governance auditing. And that's something which is very important. It's not yet, the law is passed, but it's not yet working, but it will work next year. So each co-ops, in its transparency process, will have at least once each 5 years to publish to the General Assembly a governance reporting process. How do I really, in my co-op, compel with the cooperative principles? That's the point. It's not auditing the accountings. That's not a question. Accountings, they don't depend whether you're a co-op or not a co-op. So this is not the point. The point is, I tell I am a co-op, and each 5 years, at least, it could be each year, if ever you want, you'll have to publish and to present and have a vote from your General Assembly, your members, this governance auditing, scrutinying on how do you compare with the cooperative principle that were enshrined into our cooperative law thanks to the 2014 law. So that's broadly the two main ideas. Expansion of whatever the legal form of the social and solidarity economy sector, and secondly, the renewal of the cooperative law.
はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. The fourth pillar of the blueprint was the legal framework. And in Japan, the cooperative-related laws and regulations, how to develop that is an important issue. Now, Mr. Gould, it's your turn. Sector-to-sector collaboration. Can you give us some specific examples?
Yeah, I think a lot has been said on this by both Enzo and Jean-Louis. Let me just distinguish two levels of sector-to-sector collaboration. One is at the sectoral apex level, if you will. And we see some important work on that. For example, we have global sectors for insurance, banking, which Jean-Louis heads up, workers, which is Sacopa, fisheries, agriculture. There are 7 in total. And there's a sector SOLG, a sectoral organization liaison group that meets on a regular basis, and they coordinate their activities, they inform one another, they plan for the future, and where they see connections, they work together. For example, our health and workers find that there are a lot of similarities around their immediate strategies, and so they work together at that level. That's at the sort of the coordinating body level. The sector-to-sector coordination at the primary cooperative level, we're seeing some renewed interest recently, particularly around how to encourage cooperative-to-cooperative trade. And how do you connect the producer cooperatives and consumer cooperatives around the world in some business relevant strategy? And this region, actually, Asia Pacific region, has been doing some work through the Malaysia sub-regional office to look at a platform that might facilitate that. We've agreed to look at how we might partner with that globally, because the potential is really much more beyond an intra-regional trade initiative. But we believe that this is not a classic build it and they will come, that you don't just build a technology platform and then hope that people will populate it with their needs and their services and goods. We think it requires a much deeper analysis. And so we're about to launch a fairly complete feasibility study that we really ask the members, would you use something like this? What would it have to provide to be meaningful? So there's the trade concept, which of course has all of the complexities that trade has, but some real potential, particularly if we can help broker the activities. So we think there's something there, but we want to test that. There's also just business referral, which is not really a consumer producer, but it's how do you connect worker cooperatives and insurance cooperatives and financial cooperatives, and how do you really make sure that you have a business referral network that helps cooperatives grow their businesses as well as possible. We have just launched a group called the Cooperative Roundtable earlier this month at the UN. We had a meeting in New York, and this will eventually consist of 100 primary cooperatives. So the International Cooperative Alliance historically has been the apex organizations that come together to coordinate the global strategy. But we're increasingly interested in having more direct communication with the frontline cooperatives so that we can make sure that what we're adopting and the direction that we're moving has, again, business relevance to the cooperatives on the ground. Otherwise, there's really not a lot of point in what we do. So the Cooperative Roundtable will eventually be 100 cooperatives. We started with the first 10, and we talked with them about what we could do globally that would help primary cooperatives. And then, going back to our earlier question, the number one strategy they want us to help them take on is public awareness. They're saying if we could raise the public awareness of cooperatives, it would be of immense value to their frontline businesses. And number two, this trade business referral concept. So these two really surfaced as areas for us to work in.
どうもありがとうございます。
Thank you so much. Time is so short because we really wanted to deepen our discussion, but I'm afraid that the time has come for us to close. But as a prerogative of a moderator, let me say a few words before we close. I think there are three pillars of questions: public awareness, enhancement, and educating to the larger community, the cooperative. And the third, collaboration, alliance, or partnership, and coming up with a mechanism and structure. So many important subjects were discussed, and I think we all enjoyed listening to very insightful views and suggestions and advice. Even if they use the same word, federation, there could be different types, and there could be a different desirable coordination, and the legal system that support that could be different. But we must always look at what is best for us. So we have a work to do. The work is not complete yet. We have to keep on working. Enzo-san towards the end said, cross-sector or inter-sector, there could be a, vertical cooperative movement, but of course you should be horizontal, cross-cutting, so there should be both collaboration and cooperation. So we, the members of the Japanese cooperative movement, I think, should, as a matter of first action, deepen the mutual understanding and also make the communication more active, at least as a first step among the Japanese cooperatives. Monsieur Vansel talked about the cherry blossoms, the coming of the spring. This will be a challenge to the interpreter. The cold winter. Because there's a cold winter, you appreciate the cherry blossoms in spring. Because the cherry trees have come through, tolerated the chilling effect of the winter, they could blossom in springtime. So for the Jeizenchu, it's a time of challenges, hardship, but I'm sure that you would overcome. And if you do, I'm sure you could have a full blossoming of the consequences of the self-reform. So we expect and we look forward for the successful consequence of the efforts that Jeizenchu is embarking upon. Now, I'm afraid we are not able to say thank you to Mr. Lori, but I'm truly grateful to the three speakers who have been so good to us. And I must also thank the audience for being such a good and attentive audience. And this concludes this discussion.
Thank
you very much, Mr. Gould, Mr. Bansel, and Mr. Pezzini, and Dr. Kitagawa. Through the Q&A and presentation, we now know what direction we should be moving towards in the future more than before. With that, we would like to conclude today's symposium. Thank you very much for coming.